Welcome to Life Stories. Imagine waking up one morning wearing a gift that you think is a symbol of love, only to realize it's been slowly poisoning you. A watch, a present from your husband who you thought you knew, has been designed to destroy everything you hold dear. For months, you've lived in the shadows of doubt, feeling something is wrong but too afraid to face it. How do you confront the person you loved, the person you built a life with, when the truth is more shocking than anything you could have imagined? This is the story of Maggie Stone, a woman whose world is shattered by the man she thought she could trust with her life. Stay with us, because the twists and turns of this journey will take you to places you never expected. Let's dive in. Maggie Stone sat at the kitchen counter, her fingers wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee, the warmth seeping into her cold hands. It was early, the first light of dawn creeping through the blinds, casting a soft glow on the polished countertops of her modest New York apartment. The sound of the city waking up was muffled, distant, as if it were a world away from the turmoil within her own home. Her daughter Emma was still asleep in her room, blissfully unaware of the tension that had been building up in their lives for the past few months. Maggie glanced at the clock. Richard would be home soon. She had once loved the predictability of their life together. The dinners, the late-night talks, the constant reassurance that everything was fine. But in the past year, something had shifted. Richard, her husband of 15 years, had become a stranger. His late nights at work had turned into long business trips, and his phone calls had become more frequent but less meaningful. She had stopped asking questions, stopped wondering why he had begun to pull away. A part of her wanted to believe it was just stress, just the weight of the world pressing down on him. But another part of her, the part that had been quietly observing for weeks, knew something was wrong. Richard had never been the type to lie, but his recent behavior felt like an intricate web of half-truths and evasions. And then there was the birthday gift, the watch. It was supposed to be a symbol of his love, something special, something he had taken time to choose. But every time Maggie glanced at it, the weight of its presence felt heavy, like a secret she wasn't yet ready to uncover. It was a beautiful piece, a deep blue face set in silver, the kind of luxury item that only someone with wealth and influence could give. Richard had insisted on having it custom made, something unique just for her. But when Maggie had put it on, something inside her had shifted. The first day was fine, the second too, but by the third, she began to feel a strange rash developing on her wrist, followed by headaches, dizziness, and an unsettling sense of exhaustion. She had dismissed it at first, thinking maybe it was a minor allergic reaction, but it didn't go away. It got worse. The rash spread, the headaches intensified, and soon she felt like a shadow of herself. Richard didn't notice at first, or maybe he did, but he never said anything. His apologies for his late arrivals seemed rehearsed now, his words more hollow with each passing day. And still, Maggie wore the watch. She wore it for him, for the love she still believed existed between them, for the life they had built. But each time she felt the cold metal against her skin, a question gnawed at her. Was this really a gift, or was it a reminder of something more sinister? On the evening of her birthday, when Richard had promised to make it up to her after his business trip, Maggie had hoped, at the very least, for a moment of peace, a reprieve from the quiet storm raging in her mind. But when the doorbell rang, and her best friend Laura stepped into the living room with Eleanor, their neighbor who had become like a second mother to Maggie, the surprise was just beginning. "Surprise!" Laura grinned, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "We're taking you out for a special night." Maggie, bewildered but curious, allowed herself to be pulled into the car, Emma in tow. The drive felt endless, the streets of New York slowly slipping away, replaced by the gleaming city lights in the distance. They stopped in front of an upscale restaurant, Lucado. Maggie was about to ask what was happening when she saw him. Richard, standing at the entrance, smiling broadly, dressed in his suit as though nothing had changed. "Surprise," he said, his voice a little too warm, too practiced. Maggie stood frozen, her heart racing. Her mind screamed, "What is he doing here?" But the moment she stepped inside, all doubts faded. Her closest friends, colleagues, even Emma were already seated, and the evening unfolded like a dream. Laughter echoed through the private room, glasses clinked, and for the first time in months, Maggie felt the familiar warmth of love, of connection. Richard had planned it all, this beautiful night to celebrate her. The questions in her mind slowly dissolved, the doubts fading into the background, until Richard stood, glass in hand, and turned the evening into something more. "Tonight," he began, his voice full of emotion, "we celebrate Maggie, my wife, my partner, the woman who has been my everything for the last 15 years. And for those 15 years, she's been the light of my life." Maggie's heart swelled, the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. She wiped away a tear, feeling like the world had shifted, that the love she had longed for was still alive. And when Richard opened the box to reveal the watch, engraved with a message of eternal love, she couldn't help but smile, grateful for the moment. But that night, after the laughter had faded and the last of the guests had gone home, Maggie's body betrayed her. The rash had spread again, more aggressively now, and the dizziness returned. She had ignored it, but the truth was creeping in. She couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. The next morning, the watch was still there, gleaming on her wrist like a cruel reminder. Richard had already left for work, and Emma was at school. Maggie looked at herself in the mirror, her reflection pale, her wrist inflamed. It was time to do something. She went to the pawn shop. Albert Finch, the owner, had seen something in her watch the moment she walked through the door. "Where did you get this?" Albert asked, his voice thick with unease. His eyes widened as he took the watch from her, inspecting it with practiced hands. Maggie told him the story of the gift, of Richard's surprise, of the love she thought was real. Albert's face turned pale. "This watch is dangerous," he said quietly. "It's not what you think it is." The truth hit Maggie like a freight train. The watch, a symbol of Richard's love, was designed to poison her slowly, releasing toxins that were now coursing through her veins. How could Richard do this to her? What would you do if someone you loved was secretly trying to harm you? Maggie's world shattered in that moment, but little did she know, this was only the beginning. The secret Richard had been hiding would soon unravel, and Maggie's fight for survival would test her in ways she never expected. And as she left Albert's shop with the watch in her hand, she knew one thing for sure. She had to face the man she loved and the man who had betrayed her before it was too late. Next, Maggie will confront the truth about Richard, but will she be able to expose him without putting herself and Emma at risk? What will she do with the shocking evidence in her hands? Maggie's hand shook as she held the watch in her palm, the cold metal burning her skin like an accusation. She had driven across the city, the feeling of betrayal weighing heavily on her chest. Albert's words echoed in her mind. "This watch is dangerous." She had to go to the police. She had to confront Richard. But as she stood outside the building where she had spent years of her life building a family, a knot tightened in her stomach. The truth, Richard's secret, his lies, was too big, too devastating to fully comprehend. She wanted to believe that there had to be some mistake, that she was misunderstanding everything. But the rash, the sickness, the oddities of Richard's behavior, they all pointed to the same conclusion. Her husband had been poisoning her, and she had been too blind to see it. Maggie walked through the front door of her apartment, trying to steady her breath. Her heart pounded in her chest. Emma was sitting on the couch, doing her homework. She didn't look up as Maggie walked in, her mind elsewhere, as teenagers often were. "Hey, sweetie," Maggie said, her voice faltering. Emma looked up, her brow furrowed. "Mom, you don't look so good. What happened?" Maggie forced a smile, masking the fear swirling in her gut. "I'm fine, honey. Just tired. It's been a long day." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue, but she pushed it down. She couldn't let Emma see how deeply shaken she was. Her daughter had already lost so much. Maggie didn't want to burden her with the ugly truth that was rapidly unfolding around them. But it was too late. Emma stood up, walking over to her. Are you sure? You've been acting different lately. You don't look like yourself. Maggie swallowed hard, her eyes filling with tears. How could she protect her daughter from all of this? How could she protect Emma from the monster that had once been her father? Richard had been her entire world, the man who promised to love her forever, the man who had vowed to protect their family. And now, it was clear that those vows had meant nothing. The door clicked open, and Richard stepped inside, his familiar voice calling out, Hey, I'm home. Maggie froze, her body stiffening as she felt the air around her grow heavy. She turned slowly to face him, her heart pounding in her chest. Richard stood there, smiling, as if nothing was wrong. He looked at Maggie, then at Emma, his eyes briefly narrowing as he noticed the tension in the room. What's going on? Maggie opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She felt paralyzed, her mind racing, struggling to find the courage to confront him. Could she really do this? Could she really face the man she loved, who had betrayed her in the most unimaginable way? I need to talk to you, Maggie finally said, her voice trembling. Richard's smile faded, replaced by a look of concern. He walked over to her, his hand reaching out to touch her arm. What's wrong, Maggie? Maggie pulled away, her gaze sharp. Don't touch me. Richard's eyebrows knitted together in confusion, but there was something else in his eyes, something she hadn't seen before. Fear? Guilt? Or was it something darker? I know what you've been doing, Maggie said, her voice low but unwavering. I know about the watch, Richard. I know what you've been planning. For a moment, Richard didn't move, his face frozen in disbelief. Then, the mask slipped. His expression twisted with frustration and fear, his lips tightening into a thin line. Maggie, you don't understand, he began, but she cut him off. No, I understand perfectly. You've been poisoning me, Richard. Slowly, over time. All for some sick, twisted plan. You thought I wouldn't notice, that I'd just keep wearing it. Keep wearing your lies. Richard took a step back, his hands raised defensively. Maggie, please. You're not thinking straight. This is all... Shut up. Maggie's voice cracked. You've been planning my death. A life insurance policy, a toxic watch, everything. And for what? So you and Vanessa could run off together? You thought you could get away with it, didn't you? Emma gasped from behind them, her voice trembling. Dad, what's going on? Richard turned to Emma, his eyes softening. Sweetheart, this isn't what it seems. I swear, I would never. Stop lying, Maggie screamed. Don't you dare lie to her, not now. Richard's face hardened, his eyes flicking between Maggie and Emma. You don't know what you're saying. I never wanted it to come to this, but I had to do what was best for me. For us. Maggie's head was spinning. Every word he said felt like a stab to her heart. She had loved him, trusted him. For 15 years, he had been the man she thought she knew, the man who had promised to cherish her. But now, he was a stranger, someone who would rather see her dead than let go of his own selfish desires. Best for you? Maggie whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. You're a monster, Richard. You killed me every day with your lies. But you won't kill me now. I'm done. Richard stepped forward, his expression pleading. Maggie, please, let's talk about this. I never meant for you to get hurt. I thought I was doing what I had to do. Doing what you had to do? Maggie repeated, shaking her head. You think I'm the one who's been blind? You think you're the victim here? She turned her back on him, her heart racing, as she walked toward the door. You'll never hurt me again. I'm going to the police. Richard lunged forward, grabbing her wrist. No, you can't. But Maggie wrenched free, her pulse pounding in her ears. I'm going to make sure you pay for what you've done, Richard. No more lies, no more games. How could someone she had loved so deeply become a stranger in the blink of an eye? What would you do if the person you trusted most turned out to be your worst enemy? Maggie's heart was heavy with betrayal as she stormed out of the apartment, ready to confront the truth once and for all. But little did she know, this was only the beginning. Richard had one last secret reveal, and the consequences would change everything. Maggie stood at the police station, her heart pounding in her chest as she clutched the evidence in her hands. The watch that had almost ended her life. The watch that Richard had given her with the pretense of love. The officer behind the desk, Detective Sarah Carter, looked at her with concern, but there was something else in her eyes, a silent understanding that Maggie was about to face the truth that would shatter everything she thought she knew. "Are you sure about this, Maggie?" Detective Carter asked, her voice soft but firm. Maggie nodded, her throat tight. She had made her choice. She could no longer run from the truth. The past months had been a blur. Richard's lies, his betrayal, the quiet poison slowly seeping into her life. And yet even now, she couldn't quite shake the memories of the man she had loved. She had tried to protect him, to believe in him. But now the truth was too clear to deny. "Richard is a liar," Maggie whispered, her voice shaky but resolute. "And I'm done pretending I don't know the truth." The door to the interrogation room opened, and Richard stepped in, his face pale, his eyes darting nervously as he saw Maggie. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Maggie didn't flinch as he walked toward her. She had heard everything he'd said. She had seen through the lies. He had planned it all. His affair with Vanessa, the life insurance policy, the poisoned watch. And now there was nothing left for him to hide. "Why, Richard?" Maggie finally asked, her voice steady, though her heart ached with the weight of the question. Richard hesitated, his gaze shifting to the floor before meeting her eyes. His voice was barely a whisper when he spoke. "I never wanted this to happen. I didn't want you to get hurt." Maggie scoffed, shaking her head. "You didn't want me to get hurt? Is that why you slowly tried to kill me? Is that why you destroyed everything we had?" "I was confused," Richard said, his voice breaking. "I met Vanessa, and she made me feel alive again. I thought if I could just get rid of you, we could start over. But I never meant for it to go this far." Tears stung Maggie's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had cried enough. "You don't get to make excuses, Richard. You made your choices. You betrayed me. You betrayed Emma. And now you're going to face the consequences." Richard's face crumpled in pain, but he didn't fight back. He didn't have the strength to anymore. He had already lost everything. The life he had built, the family he had destroyed, it was all slipping away. And Maggie could see it in his eyes. The regret, the guilt, the realization that nothing he could say would ever undo the damage he had caused. "Where's Vanessa?" Maggie asked, her voice low. "She's gone," Richard said, his voice hollow. "She left. She knew it was over. She and I, we were just waiting for the right moment. But now?" He trailed off, his shoulders slumping in defeat. Maggie didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The man in front of her was not the man she had loved. He was a stranger, someone who had betrayed her in ways she couldn't have imagined. He was the man who had tried to take away her life, her future, for nothing more than selfish desires. As Richard was led away by the officers, Maggie felt a sense of finality wash over her. This was it. This was the end of the life they had built together. The betrayal, the lies, the broken promises, none of it would ever be fixed. She had to let go. But as she stood there, the weight of everything settling on her shoulders, she couldn't help but think of Emma. How would Emma cope with this? What would she tell her daughter when they got home? How would she explain to her that the man they had trusted, the man they had loved, was capable of such darkness? The door to the station opened again, and Emma rushed in, her eyes wide with worry. "Mom, are you okay? I heard what happened. I was so scared. What's going on?" Maggie knelt down and pulled Emma into a tight embrace. "It's over, sweetie. It's over. We're going to be okay. I'm so sorry you had to see this." Emma clung to her mother, her small hands gripping Maggie tightly. "I don't understand, Mom. I don't understand how Dad could do this. How could he?" Maggie pulled back slightly, looking into her daughter's tear-filled eyes. "He made a mistake, Emma. He made a terrible, unforgivable mistake. But we're not going to let him ruin us. We're stronger than that." Emma nodded, her tears staining Maggie's shirt. "I know, Mom, but I miss him. I don't want to lose him." Maggie's heart broke as she kissed the top of Emma's head. "I know, baby, I know. But we have each other, and that's all we need." They stood there for a long moment, holding on to each other, their hearts broken but united. The world around them had fallen apart, but together they would rebuild. They would heal. They would move on. But as they left the police station, Maggie couldn't shake the feeling that something still wasn't right. She had confronted Richard, she had faced the truth, but the wound was still there. It was deep. It was raw. And the journey to healing wouldn't be easy, but she would walk it, one step at a time, for herself, for Emma, and for the life they would build from the ashes of their past. As they stepped into the car, Emma turned to her mother, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "What happens now, Mom?" Maggie smiled softly, her hand resting on Emma's. "Now we move forward. We take it one day at a time." What would you do if you found out the person you trusted most had betrayed you in the most unimaginable way? Could you forgive someone who tried to take everything from you, or would you walk away forever? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed the story, comment 100. Where are you watching from? Please share with your friends, and thank you for watching Life Stories.